Holy cow. Indiana just destroyed Oregon in the college football playoffs. They just erased them. And it really wasn't even a game. This was a message to the entire sport. From the first play to a pick six. By halftime, it felt like it was over. And the fourth quarter was just absolutely humiliating for Dan Lanning and the Ducks. Let's talk about this because now I think Indiana is, of course, they're going to the national championship, but they're looking like the most unstoppable team that college football has seen in, dare I say, years. Nick, this is absolutely wild. Welcome in to Marvin Round in the Morning. We got a lot to talk about on this one.
Yeah, this one was so much fun to watch. Generally speaking, we've been on this ridiculous heater over the last, 2-3 weeks of close games, momentum swings, lead changes late in the fourth. This was a, 30-point game. It was over with, I think, probably 6 minutes to go in the first quarter, and yet I was entertained all the way through because of the sheer dominance that Indiana displayed. This was actually a pretty fun night for me, I thought.
It was a fun night. Don't get me wrong. It was a fun game. I didn't turn it off by any means. I watched the entire thing, but it felt like it was over quick. The moment it was over, I mean, dare I say, did it feel over to you on the very first play of the game? Like just a little bit, just a tad with that pick six right off the bat, Dante Moore. I mean, Dan Lanning said earlier in the day, in their early press conferences, if they want to be Indiana, we can't have turnovers. And guess what happened on the very first play? Indiana takes it back for a pick six. Slightly. If you're an Oregon fan, do you think you died a little bit inside when that happened? Because I think you might have.
Oh, absolutely. I feel for the Oregon fans out there. That, for me, trying to keep a level head, I was like, okay, maybe Indiana just came out a little bit hot. Like Oregon maybe wasn't quite ready for the stage. I didn't know exactly. No, that was they set the tone and they did not let their foot off the gas. I mean, I don't know if we're going to get into this a little bit, but the rubber band theory, Indiana gets up to this ridiculous lead at half. And I'm like, I don't know. Are they going to be able to hold on to this one? You're right. The first play, the tone that was set when the 15-minute mark in the first quarter was on the clock, that tone did not change. Curt Cignetti was pissed up 40. I mean, this Indiana team is like kryptonite to that rubber band theory. They will not fall for that reason. If they fall, it might be in a close game, but I don't think they're going to ever let their foot off the gas. This was a fun one just because you knew from minute zero who was going to be the tougher team, the faster team, the more prepared team. And I don't know. This one was fun to watch. It really was. I put up on my Instagram story, is this team just as dominant as the 2019 LSU team? And that's how you know it's going to be a blowout, is before half, if you're already having those conversations. And it ended up being a 50-50 split for my followers. I think that's about right. Like, you could make the argument. That was what was fun to watch about this, was they were so dominant. It wasn't just a win. It was in a racing. You're exactly right.
Yeah, I'm interested to have that conversation in the future about comparing those two teams. I think obviously Indiana's got to win next week to make that obviously come true. And they're completely different teams. But when you look at them in a glass box, I think it'd be really fun to compare them. Look, Oregon deserves a little credit here, and we're going to probably talk a little bit more about this. But at least in the first quarter, that pick six obviously was dreadful, and there's no doubt about that. And they could have just laid down and died. And if you look at the final score, you might think that actually happened. But in the first quarter, they bounced back right away. I mean, they had that interception. They had that pick six. They bounced back, touchdown. The first quarter, touchdown, back and forth between Indiana and Oregon. We didn't get punts until the second quarter. I mean, you at least had that. You at least had a good first quarter to remember if you're an Oregon Duck fan watching this Peach Bowl. But overall, at least there was a little bit of fun here. What do you take from Dante Moore here? Of course, right off the bat, people were saying, making jokes about, hey, well, they'll be fine when you go to New York Jets. They'll be fine when you go to New York Jets. And then I saw something that was hilarious on social media. And I'm not trying to bring the Ducks down even more than they possibly are feeling right now. But as soon as that pick six happened, somebody said, I think it was Ari Wasserman of On3, he said, well, the best part about that is if he gets drafted to the Jets, that won't happen in practice because the Jets haven't had a single interception all season long. Yeah, I thought that was absolutely hilarious. But what do you take from Dante Moore's performance here? 24 for 39, 285, 2 touchdowns in 1 interception. Obviously, that pick six on play 1.
I mean, you can't really take too much away from what Dante did in this game. It wasn't a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination. It wasn't even close. But I don't think he necessarily lost them this game. It was just one of those where, if you weren't going to be perfect, you weren't going to stand a chance. You could have had a very, very good game, and it still wouldn't have been enough. 285, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. That's a solid game. It depends, obviously, on how the stats fall, and that's exactly like what this is. Like, sometimes context matters more than the actual raw numbers, and I think that's exactly what this is. But this just wasn't enough from Dante Moore. It was a great performance. There were some catches that we were texting back and forth about, some throws that were like, this would have been one of the top plays of the game had Oregon not been down by 40 points. Like, if this had happened, tie game, even the timing in the quarters, some of the throws, some of the catches that were made were like, okay, this is a big time play. It just felt like Chris Paul hits a big 3 to cut the lead to 36. Like, that's exactly how this felt. So, you can't take too much away from Dante Moore, but it's really, Indiana was just way more prepared, made bigger plays early on, and they did not ever let their foot off the gas. So it didn't really matter what Dante Moore did.
That's a very good point. That's true. And again, I think that there's a little bit of love that you should still give to Oregon here, because I think Indiana is just an ultimately good team. I think they might be the team of destiny, if you will, for this season. What Curt Cignetti has done over this past 2 seasons has been unreal. I mean, do you remember just a few years ago where he walked up to the Big Ten at media days and said, I'm glad I'm here because we're going to be playing in this game next year. And everybody looked at him like he was crazy, because he's like, hang on a minute. Is he the coach of Indiana? And he's saying that? And then look where Indiana is now. I mean, this is just 2 years removed from them being one of the worst teams in college football history, the history of this sport. And now we're saying the complete opposite in 24 months' time, where this might be the greatest team we have possibly ever seen. When did you feel like it was truly over here? Was it before halftime when they hit that 28th point, that Charlie Becker touchdown? That, to me, was it. I mean, that was the amazing one. That pass that he threw to Charlie Becker's like a 40-yard dart for Mendoza. To me, that's when I said, yeah, this one's not ending nice for the Ducks. Indiana's taking this one.
Yeah, because the way it started with the pick six, we know how the game played out, and we know that was a result of preparation, more, basically just being more ready for the moment. You can make all these different arguments, but in the moment you can say, okay, that was just kind of a weird, like, obviously Moore misses inside. Indiana just happens to be right place, right time. And then you're exactly right. Oregon does go down and score. And so you're like, okay, we might be in for something here. Obviously, Indiana has the edge with a pick six in this one, kind of got a free touchdown. But outside of that, like, Oregon still has a chance. And it just kept, one thing after the other, Indiana. And then that was the kind of the point, moving to 28 points. That throw was exactly on check, right on point. I mean, and to me, it wasn't quite Trinidad Chambliss heat check level, but we already knew what Fernando Mendoza did in the game prior, right, against Alabama. More touchdowns than interceptions. He was already kind of on a roll. And then going into this game, I was wondering, like, is he going to come back down to earth a little bit or stay up in the clouds? And that throw to me was, no, this dude is just legit. He's going, I think, what did he end up with? He had 17 to 20 and 5 touchdowns. So yet again, more touchdowns than interceptions. 177 yards isn't impressive, but to be fair, Oregon turned it over in their own territory so many times. How could he even get enough yards?
That's true.
Right. It just came down to like ball placement. So the 4th touchdown for Indiana was kind of the turning point for me. There was a huge lead. You're getting later in the second quarter. I don't know how Oregon's going to need to really, really, really turn it around, like completely flip the script. And that's not that can't happen, but it wasn't really showing like Indiana had any cracks up until that point. So that was the moment for me. And the most notable part of that was Fernando Mendoza is just some sort of demon slayer. I don't know what his deal is, but he is putting the ball exactly where it needs to be time after time after time and making good decisions with it too. Not only putting it in a bucket, but actually hitting open receivers, making the right reads. This Indiana team is great, but Fernando Mendoza, I mean, he's obviously the right guy for the Heisman.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that he just solidified himself as number 1 overall pick, most likely to the Vegas Raiders, barring a trade. So, I mean, that's something to look forward to for the NFL as well. Right. What I like about this Indiana team, and Mendoza obviously is the key part here. And again, when you look at his stat line, 177, only 3 incompletions, 5 touchdowns. The 5 touchdowns is what matters the most. The yards don't really matter because you win the football game by, 34 points. Yards don't matter. You just have to win the football game to make it happen. And a lot of people give him a doubt, saying that this is the worst Heisman we've had in years because of the yards. But look at what he's done on this Indiana team. They're now 15-0. I think that's a terrible comparison to like comparing Heisman's if all we're going to do is look at stats, right? If we're only going to look at just yardage, I guess that's why I say not actual stats. Stats are important, but like if we're paying attention to yards in that case, that doesn't always tell the full story. And I think Fernando Mendoza is a really good reason to explain that. What I like about this Indiana team, though, is that they don't make mistakes. They hardly get penalties. Each team only had 5 penalties in this game. They were actually pretty disciplined. Hardly any negative plays. The only negative play that I can remember in this game was the only sack that Oregon recorded, but it was a Mendoza mistake. I'll take that. It was a fumble. It wasn't anything at the offensive line getting to Indiana, getting to Mendoza. It was mistake by Mendoza that happened to be a loss, a good loss by that did happen to turn into a punt. But overall, that was really it. We don't see too many negative plays. They usually always are in third and manageable, and they just play successful football. It feels like a cheat code how clean and unfair these guys play football. It's insane.
That's exactly. It was like, I've seen a couple tweets, circulating. Maybe is Indiana cheating in some way? Because it feels like they're perfect. Like they're literally playing on rookie mode somehow. Like the ball, and honestly, you can't like cheat on ball placement. You're just better if that's the case. And so that's my argument is like, they're also committing to these plays and actually executing them at a super high level. We're getting like ridiculous blocking schemes on offense. Obviously, defense is where maybe you have the question mark because how are they that prepared? But Curt Cignetti took this team from like a 40% winning program to now having 25-2 over the last 2 years. Ridiculous. So I think that's coaching. But no, it just feels like this was what I was going to come into the show today and say was Indiana felt like they could do no wrong. Everything they did, and I mean this, was perfect. That audio, it's like perfect in every sense of the word. Like every blocking scheme was perfect. Every throw was perfect. Every decision, every, the way they defended passes. They didn't have a whole lot of, penalty yards that made up, gave Oregon a chance in this one. Maybe later on in the game because it was kind of over. But for the most part, whatever Indiana did, they did it. They had it their way. They went full on Subway on us. They just really made everything that was in front of them their game, and they played it exactly how they wanted to. And obviously that led to a win. But this team feels like the team of destiny. It's not just like they're phenomenal, but they control games. They control teams. They set the tone. And when you do everything that Indiana did, like even if you weren't as talented as they are, you're going to win a lot of games. But the talent on the field is showing as well, which is crazy because they have no 5 stars.
Yeah, that's true. That's a completely different story as well. Look, say what you will about Indiana, where you think they're a powerhouse, you think that they're cheating, whatever the case may be. But on the flip side, I don't think Oregon didn't just lose this game. I think they were exposed. Of course, there was a couple mistakes from Dante Moore. Sure. But like, let's look at Dan Lanning for a minute, right?
Mm-hmm.
Playoffs, Dan Lanning. I mean, other than that Texas Tech win, not doing good. Last year got blown up by Ohio State, eventually the national champion winner, sure. Mm-hmm. And then this year got blown up by Indiana, which we assume is most likely on their way to maybe winning the national championship. Maybe that's the case. Maybe they just lose to the eventual national champion year in and year out. Maybe that's Oregon's narrative for the remaining time while Dan Lanning is the head coach at Oregon. But why does Oregon keep collapsing? Like, that's what I want to know. Is it fair for me to say that they got absolutely exposed in this game?
They did get exposed, like absolutely. But I think on some level too, they just made a lot of mistakes. And when you make as many mistakes early on as Oregon did, it's going to be hard to stay in games. Like the pick 6 early, the fumble, I think it was inside like the 5. The punt block late didn't really matter, but that's another instance of like, I just felt like that was another Indiana doing whatever they wanted to do. And so you could make the argument that maybe, Oregon wasn't prepared. They weren't ready for how like the lights were brighter than we thought kind of thing. There's definitely that. But I would say it comes down to they just kind of got unlucky with a few of these. If you get down that early, that fast, it's going to be so hard to flip the momentum, especially in a game in an environment where I think it was like 95% Hoosier fans there. I mean, the boos were so loud late in the game when there were, missed PI calls. Of course, they were up by 35. Which I don't even discredit the Indiana fans. They've been through hell and back rooting for this team. And now they have the opportunity to watch them go to a national championship. You're going to boo at every call you can. But like you have a really tough crowd to win over. You can't do that. You have to start making exceptional plays, no mistakes, and that's already difficult to do in football. When they find themselves down that early, that fast, because of their own mistakes, like you hate to say it, but if this were a 7-game series, I wonder if it'd be closer. Sometimes it just ends up being like you lose a game real ugly and you move on. Obviously, that's not exactly how this goes because you don't get the 7-game series, but I just look at Oregon maybe as like this was a weird off day. It ended up being the lights were too bright, and Dan Lanning will be back probably maybe next year even. Like they can reload pretty quickly.
See, I'm going to push back there because I don't know if you should give them that much credit. Because look, if you played this game 9 out of 10 times, and we've had this conversation before when you look at some of these blowouts, I don't know how much it is different. I think if you played this game 10 times, I think more than 5, it happens in the same result. Indiana takes over in a blowout win.
Yeah.
Maybe Oregon gets lucky in one, but that's it. I think Indiana was just a better team. That pick 6 didn't happen just because Dante Moore panicked. It happened because Indiana baited him on the very first play. Those fumbles didn't happen by accident. Indiana attacks the ball. They force chaos. It's really impressive. Oregon didn't collapse. They were put in a position when collapse was the only option, in my opinion, because Indiana made that happen. And I hear that what you're saying about this team and Dan Lanning will bounce back. But again, this is the second time it's happened. Ohio State last year, Indiana this year. At some point, that stops being bad luck. It stops being not being unlucky, and it starts being who you are in big games. And I think you might have to ask that question about Dan Lanning. And I like Dan Lanning too. I really do. But I think we have to make the question, elite coaches don't get embarrassed like this. Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, you want to be in that tier?
Cignetti?
Yeah, you don't just Curt Cignetti. If you want to be in that tier, you don't just lose. You get punched in the mouth and then you punch back. Oregon did not do that. Oregon did not punch back at all last night. Every hook completely missed.
If you watch the game back, you will notice that they got punched square in the nose and then they were knocked out. Like that was it. Other than, I guess, that return drive. They had one drive where it really felt like, okay, they're still in it, but it looked like their knees were wobbly. Like they didn't really have a whole lot of juice to them. They got their way into the end zone, but it didn't really feel like, we're not going anywhere. Like we made a mistake, but we're going to boom. Like we're going to be just fine. It didn't feel that way. So, obviously hindsight is 2020. But I would argue that there were a few mistakes that the Oregon, the Ducks made that weren't really in their control. The fumble by Moore that ended up going off the running back's shoulder. Like that's just, it's a preparation issue. I understand that, but it's kind of like terrible luck for Moore. There's just not really much you can do there because that's kind of on the running back to not be right there. There were a few things like that, and it just kind of felt like it was one of those nights for Oregon. But the bigger picture here is, in my opinion, like what we were talking about, Indiana just like, if you're going to give them an inch, they're going to take it to the edge of the universe and back. Like it's not even a mile. You make a mistake, they're going to make you pay for it. Not only are they going to score, they're going to demoralize you, grab all the momentum, and use it for the rest of the game. Like you have to be perfect against this Indiana team.
Yeah, if you give them a foot, even if they only need a millimeter, Curt Cignetti is not going to change his face the entire time and is going to be focused for that entire foot until that foot has been completed. That's exactly what I love that. That's exactly what Curt Cignetti has been. It's almost refreshing. I think I said this to you last night. It's almost refreshing the fact that he is completely locked in from the beginning of the game to the end of the game, no matter the score. Yes. Because I feel like, and I look at this from different aspects. Obviously, the game, how important it is. It shows that every snap is important no matter what the score is. But also the younger players developing. When they get into the game late, it shows that he is focused on them just as much as the starters. And I think that is going to help with retention. It's going to help with so many other things to make this team turn into, dare I say, a powerhouse of the future in college football. So with that being said, let's zoom out a little bit. Okay. Indiana, Miami. And you talk about, that's the national championship. You talk about Indiana fans traveling well to the Peach Bowl. This game's going to be in Miami. Technically, Miami's the away team, but they might actually be the away team the way that Indiana's traveling right now in their home in South Beach. I'm curious to see what this fans look like. Like how many Indiana fans are going to show up? How embarrassing would it be if Indiana fans outdid Miami fans in Miami? I feel like that's a possibility after seeing what they did in the Peach Bowl.
So here's my thing with this, right? Miami fans, I think about 25% of them actually know that they have a football team. Even the Miami fans, I don't really like. They don't really
I think
know.
that's starting to change again, but I think you're
It is
right.
starting
I
to
think you're
change.
right.
You're right. There is a turning of the tide, but as of right now, like they're like, where do we play? So there's that going into this. But the other bigger piece, a significantly bigger piece, is it's really going to come down to, and I hate to say this, who has more money, who's going to have the more dominant crowd is going to come down to pocketbooks. Because I saw the cheapest seat for this game was like $3,800, the cheapest seat. So I don't have any problem with I think Indiana, if it were all the tickets were like $50, it would be almost 100% Indiana fans. Like I do believe that they have seen almost nothing like this in their entire lives. They're going to make it a huge priority to get down to the national championship. And who knows? Maybe this never happens again. Obviously, you would like to think that it will, but you never know. And so you capitalize on that moment. But man, $3,800. I was talking about this last night with my girlfriend. I was like, how much would you pay to watch Iowa State go win a national title? Like 3,800. I might, but it's really pushing my limit. Obviously, I'm a little younger. Some of these older fans have, a much more impressive savings account than I do. But boy, is that a large number. So I think that's going to get into kind of is what the crowd's going to look like. But to be completely honest, it could be 100% Miami fans, and I don't think it would matter. I just think it'd be like playing in front of nobody. Indiana's going to dominate this game.
I'm with you. And look, I think Miami has an elite defensive line. I think Carson Beck has shown that he can shine in moments, especially at the late game drive he had against Ole Miss and to get himself to the national championship game. I think Malachi Toney's an impressive freshman, but I don't think that's enough. I don't think that's enough for this Indiana efficient offense, for this Indiana defense that is completely focused. And even with their injuries, because Indiana's not completely 100%, just like no team is at this time and point in the year, Indiana has found a way to be super successful in all phases of the football. Even the punting. I put this on social media last night too. I said they even punt like they're the best football team in the world. They truly focus on every single piece of football. I don't think I've ever seen this before, where every single ounce, every single play matters like it's the very last play, like it is the play to win the national championship game. The fourth down punt in the second quarter is the most important play at that moment. Curt Cignetti has this team and the culture and the identity and the belief system at a completely different level that I have never seen before.
Yeah, it's hard to the best comparison I can possibly make, because you're exactly right, is that they are the brick shit house in comparison to the every other team being the wooden shed that's kind of holding itself together. Like everything is so completely solid. For example, when Iowa State punts or is returning punts, I actively hold my breath. I am terrified of the outcome. When Indiana does anything, there is a greater than 99% chance that whatever they want to have happen will happen. There is no need to stress, worry, be concerned, anything like that. Whatever you think is supposed to happen will likely happen. They'll get ahead of schedule. They're going to break a large play. For a fact it's at least not going to be something negative, a turnover. And yeah, of course, those things do happen, like the Fernando Mendoza, spinning fumble. Like, things happen. It's football. But nothing like what it does for every other team. You said it best. Like, it really is like every phase of the game, every play is the play that will win them a national championship. And that's kind of what it is on some level. And that's why they're so dominant. It's just an unbelievable viewing experience. I mean, I have seen nothing like it, honestly.
If Indiana wins the national championship game, this will be obviously 2 years in a row that they've been absolute units in college football. But they'll finally win their first national championship if they win this one. Do we start talking about how Indiana is turning into a dynasty? I know dynasty is a weird word these days because of NIL, obviously players leaving in the portal, players leaving for eligibility. It's weird to say it for college football, but it's absolutely possible. Obviously, we said that about Clemson. We said that about Alabama over the last decade or so, Georgia in the mix as well. Is Indiana in that category if they win a natty today or this week, or do they have to win more than one to make that actually a thing?
I mean, yeah, they'll technically have to win more than one. Like, they just will, and it's only a matter of time. I think we can't really call that this early. I think it's better to look at Curt Cignetti and what he's done in his career. You could look at him as like a dynasty owner, and just like what he's done with the teams that he's been at. JMU, obviously his last stop, IUP in there. His record is unbelievable. Like, he said it best, Google me. So there is something to be said about Curt Cignetti, and there's something to be very excited about for the future of Indiana football. But to call it a dynasty right now would be, to be completely frank, ridiculous. That would be stupid. And I'm saying that as a Patriots fan. So like a lot of people want to call like the Chiefs the dynasty. And it's like, you have to let the whole thing ride out. Like you can't just call it early and say it's a dynasty. But I will say you can call this dynasty watch. Like you need to be watching Indiana football, watching Curt Cignetti. It's absolutely possible that they rip off, 6 out of the next 8 national championships. Like the way that they look this year, like I said, phenomenal. It's hard to really comprehend just how good this team is, but they've already reloaded for next season. And the way that you mentioned it earlier, the way Curt Cignetti treats these teams, it already lends itself to, younger guys wanting to come in and be depth pieces because they know they're going to be developed, on top of the fact that if you keep winning, you bring in more talent. Everyone wants to be on the national championship team. So he will probably, I would guess, build this, kind of ridiculous curve, an exponential return cycle. And then I saw a tweet last night that was talking about the amount of Indiana scholastic revenue that he is generating. And so the university is going to be totally okay with spending a ton of money on his contract and giving him money to, build, facilities and all of this, because the revenue from the university has just ballooned. And so I think we're on dynasty watch. Absolutely. And maybe of all the dynasties of all time, this is the one I'm most comfortable with saying, like, we're really close to a dynasty, but it's just too early. Like it's literally year 2. So the fact that the turnaround to this point has happened is wild, insane, unbelievable, but you can't call it anything more than that as of right now.
I think it's safe to say you and I both think that Indiana is going to beat Miami, correct?
Beat might be too weak of a word, but yeah.
Great. Sure. Great. So let me take a bold take before we leave here. They lost. Oregon lost to Indiana by 34 points. Does Miami lose by more or less than 34 points in the national championship?
I want to say less. I do. I think this will be closer. I think Miami has a really, really solid defensive line. I don't put too much, honestly, on Carson Beck here. I haven't seen enough. I think he's more of a game manager, but guys like Tony are going to make plays. They're going to keep him in this game. And I think also part of it is they saw what, Indiana did to Oregon. So they're not going to want that to happen to him too. I think it'll be less than 34 or whatever. But I don't know if it'll be like, it might not be a touchdown game. It'll probably be like 20s.
Okay. Well, before you go, I want to know something. Are we watching a great team or are we watching something historic? Because personally, I think those are two different things. Drop it in the comments right now. Is Indiana just hot, or is this a team we're going to be talking about for the next 20 years? As Nick said, possibly dynasty watch. And if you don't want to miss what happens next, hit that subscribe button. Marvin Round in the Morning, bringing you daily content every single weekday, including exclusive YouTube coverage like this one you're watching right now. We'll see you back here next time, right here on Marvin Round in the Morning.